Look, Spain once held the entire world in its hands. In the 16th century, it wasn't Britain flying the banner of the largest empire on earth. It was Spain. For the first time in history, one crown commanded a global empire stretching from Europe to Africa, from the Americas to Asia. They ruled territory so vast that people started saying, "The sun never sets on the Spanish Empire," a phrase the British would later steal and make famous. But here's the crazy part. The richest empire the world had ever seen. It collapsed under the weight of its own treasure. And the reason this matters today? Simple. Because just like Spain, we constantly mistake sudden inflows of money for real wealth. And the crash that follows? Always brutal. When Spain stumbled into the New World, after 1492, they hit what looked like an infinite jackpot. Gold and silver in quantities no European kingdom could even imagine just poured into Spanish hands. The conquest of Mexico in 1521 toppled the Aztec Empire, giving Spain access to rich mines in Zacatecas. A decade later, they conquered Peru, shattered the Inca Empire, and unlocked the Mountain of Silver at Potosí, a mine so huge they called it the mountain that eats men. For more than a century, this place fed a conveyor belt of treasure ships crossing the Atlantic. Between 1500 and 1650, Spain imported an estimated 180,000 tons of silver and 2,000 tons of gold. To put that in perspective, that's more silver than all of Europe had mined in the previous 1,000 years, combined. This treasure didn't just reshape Europe, it reshaped the entire world. From Seville and Cadiz, Spanish ships carried bullion east to the Mediterranean, north to the Low Countries, and west across the Pacific to Manila, where silver was exchanged for Chinese silk and porcelain. It was the birth of the first truly global economy, and Spain sat right at the center of it. Here's something that might shock Americans today. When Jamestown, the first permanent English colony, was founded in 1607, it was basically a swamp struggling to survive. Meanwhile, Mexico City already had universities, printing presses, and massive cathedrals. Lima was a thriving city. St. Augustine in Florida, founded by Spain in 1565, was the first permanent European settlement in what is now the United States. That's 4 decades before Jamestown even existed. Spain wasn't just ahead. They were building global infrastructure while Britain and France were still fumbling with failed colonies. And yet this empire, fueled by literal rivers of bullion, was hollow at its core. Why? Because Spain confused treasure with wealth. The silver was real. But what they did with it, that turned strength into weakness. Prices in Spain exploded. Between 1500 and 1600, inflation ran rampant. Prices quadrupled in a century. Ordinary Spaniards found bread and clothing harder to afford, even as their nation sat on mountains of silver. How does that even happen? Because money only holds value when it's scarce enough to be trusted. When too much bullion pours into an economy, its purchasing power collapses. Think about it like this. Imagine a town where bread costs 1 coin. Suddenly 10 times more coins arrive, but the number of bakers and loaves of bread stays the same. Bakers realize people have more coins, so they charge more. Soon bread costs 2, 3, 4 coins, not because bread got better, but because the coins are worth less. That was Spain's fate. Economists call this the price revolution, the first great wave of global inflation, triggered by too much silver chasing too few goods. But here's the brutal part. The inflation didn't hit everyone equally. Elites who handled silver first, nobles, merchants, bankers, they profited before prices adjusted. Ordinary people living on fixed wages, they got left behind. The irony was savage. The more silver Spain brought in, the poorer its people felt. Silver that should have been a blessing became poison instead. The mistakes ran even deeper. Instead of investing in productive industries, Spain spent its fortune on imports. Italian merchants, Dutch traders, German craftsmen. They all grew rich selling luxuries to Spain, paid for with American silver. Meanwhile, the empire's own industries? They atrophied. Why build factories or trade networks when you could simply wait for the treasure fleet to arrive? Spain turned into a consumer, not a producer. Even as its rivals reinvested every coin they could steal, capture, or earn. And of course, the Spanish monarchs burned staggering amounts of money on war. The Habsburg dynasty saw itself as the defender of Catholicism after the Reformation. And that mission? It carried an astronomical price tag. Treasure from Mexico and Peru funded wars against the Ottoman Turks. It financed armies to suppress the Dutch revolt. It kept Spain entangled in the French wars of religion. The Crown poured money into the 30 Years' War, one of the bloodiest conflicts Europe ever saw. Even the infamous Spanish Armada of 1588, that colossal fleet sent to crush Protestant England, was fueled by New World silver. And when that armada failed, the financial shock was devastating. So where did all the gold and silver actually go? Into battlefields, ships, and debt. Because Spain wasn't just spending what arrived, they were borrowing against treasure that hadn't even landed yet. German banking families like the Fuggers, and later Genoese financiers, advanced enormous loans to the Crown. These loans were secured by future silver shipments. In theory, it was brilliant. The mines of Potosi would keep the silver flowing forever, right? In practice, it was suicidal. If a fleet was delayed, wrecked in a storm, or intercepted at sea, Spain defaulted, and default they did, repeatedly. 4 times in the 16th century alone. 1557, 1575, 1596, and 1607. Let that sink in. Imagine being the richest empire in the world and still declaring bankruptcy every 2 decades. That was Spain's reality. And into this fragile system sailed the pirates. They weren't just random marauders. They were weapons of economic warfare. England and the Netherlands understood something crucial. If you struck the treasure fleets, you didn't just steal bullion. You collapsed Spain's credit. Francis Drake, backed by Queen Elizabeth herself, circled the globe in the 1580s, plundering Spanish galleons and returning home with treasure worth half of England's annual revenue. Piet Hein, the Dutch privateer, captured an entire Spanish treasure fleet off Cuba in 1628, 11 million guilders worth of silver. That single strike nearly toppled Spain's finances again. Each time a fleet was lost, it wasn't just a bad day at sea. It was a sovereign default in real time. Spain had mortgaged tomorrow's treasure, and when pirates or storms claimed it, creditors across Europe were left unpaid. Meanwhile, England and the Netherlands reinvested their stolen silver in navies, banks, and trade companies, the foundations of their future empires. Spain's lifeline had become its Achilles heel. Spain's rulers could have taken that flood of bullion and built a sustainable economy. They could have invested in local industries, encouraged innovation, built a tax system that captured wealth fairly across society. Instead, they treated silver like an endless fountain. And the Crown fell into the most dangerous trap of all: debt addiction. From the mid-1500s, Spanish monarchs borrowed heavily against future treasure shipments. It was a high-stakes financial game. Bullion would arrive in Seville, debts would be repaid, and the cycle would continue. But there was one fatal flaw. If the silver didn't arrive, Spain defaulted. Part of the reason was war. Spain's Habsburg monarchs saw themselves not just as kings, but as defenders of Catholic orthodoxy after the Protestant Reformation. That mission cost fortunes. American silver bankrolled campaigns against the Ottoman Empire. It funded the brutal suppression of the Dutch revolt. It financed the fight against Protestant England. The Spanish Armada alone cost millions of ducats, the equivalent of billions today. And when it failed, financial shock therapy. And still, the wars continued. The 30 Years' War, which tore Europe apart from 1618 to 1648, devoured Spanish treasure at a terrifying pace. Here's the cruel irony. The money rarely stayed in Spain. Bullion passed through Spanish hands like water through a sieve. Italian shipbuilders, Flemish merchants, German bankers. They were all paid in silver, enriching rival economies. Spain consumed. Others produced. Every new fleet arriving in Seville made foreign creditors richer while hollowing out Spain's own industries. By leaning on imports and foreign loans, the Crown crippled its domestic economy, locking itself into dependency. Then came the pirates. Treasure fleets were Spain's lifeline, but they were also a glaring target. These convoys carried what were essentially the empire's paychecks, enormous shipments of silver from Veracruz or Havana, bound for Seville. Losing one wasn't just an inconvenience. It was catastrophe. That 1628 strike by Piet Hein, when he captured that entire treasure fleet off Cuba worth over 11 million guilders, that single event wrecked Spain's credit, collapsed confidence in its ability to repay loans. Francis Drake, John Hawkins, and other English privateers, licensed by Queen Elizabeth herself, turned piracy into state policy. Every galleon seized by English or Dutch corsairs wasn't just plunder, it was economic warfare. England and the Netherlands reinvested the silver into navies, banks, and trading companies. Spain's lifeblood was being siphoned off and converted into the foundations of its rivals' empires. This reliance on treasure fleets made Spain uniquely fragile. Other powers like England and the Dutch Republic diversified their wealth into trade networks, agriculture, and eventually industry. Spain? They bet everything on bullion. When a fleet arrived, debts were paid and the system limped on. When a fleet was lost, the crown lurched into crisis, default, or another desperate loan. Pirates didn't just steal gold. They pulled bricks out of the foundation of Spain's empire. By the early 1600s, Spain still looked mighty on maps. Its empire stretched across oceans. Its kings sat in opulent palaces. Its cathedrals were filled with treasures from the Americas. But the empire was financially hollow. Inflation had eroded domestic prosperity. Debt had shackled the crown to foreign bankers. And piracy had turned Spain's greatest asset into its greatest weakness. For ordinary Spaniards, wealth was an illusion. Prices rose, wages stagnated, taxes climbed to pay for wars that never seemed to end. The world's richest empire was eating itself alive. As Spain staggered under the weight of its own treasure, other powers quietly studied its mistakes. The English, the Dutch, and later the French saw that bullion alone did not make an empire. Spain's system was built on extraction. Mines, tribute, treasure fleets. Colonies in the Americas existed to funnel wealth home, not to grow into thriving economies. It was a model of plunder, not production. Britain, by contrast, developed colonies that created sustained economic value. North America wasn't rich in gold or silver, but it produced tobacco, sugar, timber, and later cotton, resources that fueled industry and trade. Instead of treasure fleets, Britain built chartered companies like the East India Company. They developed banking institutions in London. Dutch merchants founded the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. They turned their navy into a weapon of global trade. These rivals didn't wait for treasure to arrive. They built systems to generate it continuously. And when they captured Spanish silver, through piracy or trade, they reinvested it, compounding their strength while Spain hollowed out. This is the crucial difference. Spain measured wealth in treasure. Britain and the Dutch measured wealth in systems. One is finite. The other is self-replicating. And history shows which one lasts. By the mid-1600s, Spain's decline was visible to everyone. The once mighty Armada was a shadow of itself. Inflation and repeated bankruptcies eroded trust in the crown. The 30 Years' War drained its coffers. The Dutch Republic gained independence and built a commercial empire. England's navy grew stronger. Its banking system became more sophisticated. Spain still had territory, but it lacked the financial muscle to defend or develop it. The empire that had terrified Europe in the 1500s was, by the 1700s, a fading giant. And yet the story of Spain's fall isn't just about kings, silver, or pirates. It's about the illusion of wealth. When floods of money arrive, whether from mines, credit, or modern printing presses, the temptation is always the same: spend it, borrow against it, burn it on wars or luxuries, but without discipline, without investment in real productivity. The money corrodes the very foundations of society. Spain's peasants knew it firsthand. They watched silver pour into Seville only to see bread prices soar beyond their reach. Today, savers watch inflation erode their wages and purchasing power, even as governments reassure them the economy is strong. The mechanisms may be different, but the pain feels familiar. The pirate raids of the 1600s also carry a modern echo. Spain's treasure fleets were vulnerable because they concentrated wealth into single, colossal shipments. Today's economies concentrate wealth into fragile financial systems. Too big to fail, banks. Debt markets balanced on razor-thin confidence. When one ship goes down, or one bank collapses, the shock ripples outward, threatening default and crisis. Spain's losses to Piet Hein in 1628 weren't so different from a financial crash today. One event exposing the fragility of the entire system. The lesson is brutal, but clear. Treasure is not wealth. Silver is not security. Real wealth comes from systems that produce value over time, from investments in productivity, from institutions that endure. Spain bankrupted itself because it thought ownership of half the world and endless silver meant power forever. In reality, it meant fragility. Its rivals understood the deeper game, and they inherited the future. History doesn't repeat exactly. but its rhythms are hard to ignore. The richest empire in the world collapsed because it confused treasure for wealth. And every society that makes the same mistake, flooding its economy with money while hollowing out its foundations, is walking the same path. The question isn't whether history will repeat, it's whether we'll recognize the warning in time. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.